Okay, bingo. We're back. This is ThinkTech. I'm Jay Fidell. More specifically, this is Community Matters here on a given Tuesday morning early. And we're going to talk about the Hawaii State Auditor. We're going to talk about understanding the Hawaii State Auditor with the Hawaii State Auditor. That's Les Kondo. Hi, Les. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. You know, a lot of people think that state government doesn't work right. Honestly, if you go down the street, walk down Bishop Street, stop any stranger, ask him that question, and you'll get a smattering of, I don't think it works right. And so, what helps it work right? What prevents it from going over the side? Well, I submit to you, it's the Office of the State Auditor, and it's been that way for a long time, and it needs to be that way. And you are the man, Les. So I'd like you to tell us why it was established, when it was established, a brief, please, history of the auditor's office and where it is now and what it does. Take 3 minutes.
Okay. Even before statehood in 1950, the state auditor that position was deemed important enough to be stuck in the Constitution, and it's been in the Constitution since then. It's intended to be an independent, unbiased, nonpartisan person that is independent from the legislature, and the protection that the Constitution provided to make sure that the auditor isn't subject to political influences or other types of influences is the auditor is appointed by a joint session of the legislature, Senate and House, and then it requires for a term of 8 years, and it requires a joint session of the Senate and the House again to remove the auditor before the 8-year period is up. And it requires 2/3 of both bodies to vote to remove the person. So there was an intent to provide some insulation or some protection for the person who is in my seat right now. It's a job that has evolved over the course of the years from 1950 to today. Initially, I think the focus was on the financial audits. And I think a lot of people, when they hear auditor, that's what comes to mind. They're thinking that we are a bunch of accountants and CPAs in this office that are looking at the departments and the agencies' financial statements and financial records. And that's not the case. Our job has evolved since 1950 to today. We're still involved in financial audits, but those audits we outsource. In other words, we hire CPA firms, independent CPA firms, to audit the financial statements of, I think it's 22 state department state programs. Not all the state departments are audited. It's kind of a volunteer thing. And we also contract out for the annual financial statement of the state of Hawaii, which is like the state of Hawaii's financial audit. But our bread and butter is really performance audits or management audits. And we have an office of, I think our count now is 21 people, including me. We have a number of analysts who come from a whole wide range, very diverse backgrounds. We have accountants, we have attorneys, we have people that are former journalists, we have people that are former real estate professionals, we have a scientist, we have a whole very diverse group of folks, and it just adds to the very terrific office that we have. Our office is primarily focused on performance audits, which is really assessing how a program is performing. In other words, we look at an agency, what they're supposed to be doing, what they're doing, and if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, we get the privilege of trying to identify why it's not working well, and then offering recommendations that really help to improve the performance of the agency. We're really here to help government, to make government better. And I think to a person in my office, we all drink from that same Kool-Aid jug. We all are here because we want to really help government be better. And if you give me a second, Jay, the analogy I use for what we do, it's like I use a building, building your house, for instance. And so what we do is we get to see what it's supposed to look like, what the state agency is supposed to look like. And in my analogy, it's the blueprint. We get to see what that house is supposed to look like. And in the agencies that we are auditing, doing a performance audit of, it generally is the statute. What was this agency created to do? What is their purpose? What is their mission? And then we get a look at what the house looks like. You know, the plans say one floor, and we look at the house and it's 2 floors. And we say, hey, you know what? It doesn't match. So when we look at an agency, we get to see what the statute says they're supposed to be doing, and we want to know what they're really doing. So we get to see the condition, we get to see the facts. And then if it doesn't match, we now got to figure out why. And that's really what sets an audit apart from many, many different types of reports, is we get to establish or try to determine the cause, the reasons why the blueprints and what the house looks like, why they don't match. And that's where our expertise and our skill comes in. And then in addition to determining the why, the reasons why the blueprint and the house don't look the same, we get to offer recommendations to try to improve government performance. And that's where we really, where our value really comes in. We're assessing how it's performing, and we're offering recommendations to try to improve performance.
Well, I have a very interesting question to ask you. Talk about how you're assessing performance of these various agencies. And gee, we have so much to talk about today. But I'd like to ask you, since we're on that point, to assess yourself.
That's a good question, because I think there's been some news lately about the Speaker of the House's working group and their report assessing really my performance. I think we're doing great. I think we've issued some reports, both performance audit reports and other types of reports that the legislature has asked us to produce. I think they are just terrific reports. I think and I get both the criticism, but a lot of the accolades and the compliments about the work that we do. I want to make it really clear that I don't do most of that work. In fact, most of that work is done by the professionals in my office that are just outstanding. So that criticism, it's directed at me, and I take it very personal, but it's also directed at everyone in this office, because to a person, they work extremely hard to do what they think is the right thing to do. So if you're asking how we're performing, I think we're performing pretty well. Can we do better? Sure, everyone can do better. I wish we had more people. I wish even us that we were a little more efficient, that we were able to get our work done and more audits out, more agencies, more programs that we could audit them to help them improve. Some of that is not in our court. Like a good example to me is OHA. We have an audit of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs mandated by an act of the legislature in 2019. We've suspended that audit. And that's only because we haven't gotten records that we deemed are necessary from OHA. We audit pursuant to government auditing standards, and those auditing standards, they contain specific criteria as to how audits need to be performed. And one of those criteria is that we need to have sufficient appropriate evidence upon which to base our audit findings. And if we don't have that, we're not able to complete the audit. So I think we're doing good. I think that we add value. I think our reports, which are published on our website, so if anyone is interested in the types of work that we do, they're welcome to go to our website. We have all our reports that are online. Hopefully people can understand what we're saying. I mean, that's one of our challenges, and that's something that we always strive to improve on, is basically our ability to communicate. I tell people, what value do we add if no one reads our reports? It's like that saying, if the tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it really make a sound? And we want to make sure that we add value, that we have impact. So we're trying to be able to communicate. So our reports have changed during my tenure. We have it more with more graphics, more infographics. We have some pull quotes. We have pictures here and there. We have a terrific team. We have an editor, a writer, and we have a graphic design professional, and they're the ones that make our report shine. But actually the words, it's the team, right? So we have a terrific group of folks, and I think that we're doing a terrific job for the state.
I do too, but that's just
Oh,
my
thanks.
opinion. Anyway, yeah, let's look at some of those reports. All those reports are available on your website. What's the website name?
It's auditor.hawaii.gov.
Okay, they're all there. You can read them. You can look at them, and there's a lot of them, and they back up. They support the point you just made that we need these reports. We have to not only do them. You're doing them pursuant to your mission going way back when, and modified to include management assessments, but also we need to see how state government is functioning, and if it's alone in the closet or falling alone in the forest, so to speak, it's not doing what it has to do. And the other thing is, you have to remain independent. You have to do what you have to do, and you're the inspector general, so to speak. You watch over the state agencies, 22 of them or whatever, and make sure that the public knows what's happening there, and that they know you know, and that they know the public knows. All of this is a sort of a statewide transparency, very, very important. And it's not just propaganda; it's investigation. Can you just a background? Can you talk about your own career a little bit? You've been in and around state government for a long time, for a lifetime, actually.
Not a lifetime. It feels kind of like a lifetime, maybe. But I'm an attorney. So I was in private litigation practice for a number of years, and then in 2003, I think is the year, I was fortunate enough to be asked to serve as the director of the State Office of Information Practices. I never thought I would work in government. I thought it was just an opportunity to see how government works, and I guess it's 18 years later. I am still a government employee, so it's been a terrific ride. So I was the director of the Office of Information Practices, which oversees our state open meetings and public records law. After that, I was appointed to be a commissioner on the Public Utilities Commission. So I served at the PUC for, I think it was a little over 4 years or so. Terrific, very interesting time. That was during Governor Lingel's tenure, and she had kicked off the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. So it was a very exciting, very interesting, very challenging time at the commission. It still is today, and they're doing a terrific job downstairs. I say downstairs because we're in the same building. But
Okay.
and then I went from there, and I was the general counsel and executive director for the Hawaii State Ethics Commission for, again, about 4 years. And from there, I've been here now, appointed in for a term that started May 1st, 2016. So almost 5 years here at the state auditor's office. And I tell you, I tell people, this is probably the most interesting, the best job in state government. And my son, this is now probably 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't think my son even knew what I did. And then one day I was complaining to him about, doing homework, going to school. He was probably in the 7th or 8th grade at the time. And then I told him, you don't want a job just like Dad. You want to make a lot of money. You want to, get a real job, a good job. And he said, what job could be better than being the state auditor? And I didn't even know that he knew what my job was. But you know what? That is absolutely true, because we get to look at state programs that most people never even heard of. And we get to spend 6 months, 7 months, whatever it may be, to really get to try to understand what this program's about and how it's working. We're never going to be experts like the guys that work at that agency that actually administer the program. But boy, we get a chance to learn about state government, about that particular program. We get to offer recommendations to try to improve the program. And then we get to move on, and we get to do it again with a different program. It's kind of like being a litigator. You get to look at a case, you get to learn about a case, about your client, and then you get to move on to something else. But in this case, we're hopefully doing things that are helping the public. We're like you said, we're providing that transparency. We're making agencies be accountable. It's public money, it's public funds, public resources. We're holding or helping to hold folks accountable. So it is a terrific job right now. So that's been kind of my career path in state government, and it's been, people said it's all been kind of good government related agencies, which is all true. And then maybe this is the culmination of all of that I get to now sit in this chair and do this wonderful work. It's terrific.
Great. Thank you for that. So I want to talk about some of the reports you've done, in the past few years that the public might be interested to know about. Perhaps they don't know about them, but pick 2 or 3 or 4 and tell us the ones that are of greater interest for you.
Sure. We did the most recent performance audit that we issued it in January, and it was about the Agribusiness Development Corporation, or AGDC. And it's one of those small agencies that until we started auditing it, I didn't know very much about it at all. The only thing I really knew is it managed the Waihoʻoli Ditch. And actually that was probably what it did for the most part for the first 12 years. Actually, it's more than that, probably the first 20 years of its existence. So AGDC, established by the legislature at the time when sugar and pineapple, those plantations were closing, and this agency corporation, Agribusiness Development Corporation, established by the legislature with what we called superpowers, powers that are unique to state government, to be able to transform itself into subsidiaries, to issue bonds, to go ahead and partner with private organizations. This entity was established to help the state transition from the plantation agricultural economy to other types of agricultural enterprises that would really keep that third leg of the economy stable. In other words, we were losing that export, the export dollars or the revenues from sugar and pineapple. And this organization, this corporation was established to try to fill that economic void. And since that time, they really haven't done very much, if anything, to do that. They have powers and responsibilities to help these agricultural organizations come in and fill that void. They're supposed to do market research. They're supposed to identify areas where the export crops would really be able to develop in the state of Hawaii, and they haven't done that. And we issued a report that we saw or the media called scathing. And that's a word. I told a reporter one time that they need a thesaurus because every report is not scathing, but it seems like every report is described as scathing. Okay, AGDC, that was a scathing report, and it was deservedly so, because it's an agency that really needs to kind of find its path, really get its act together, because we found that they weren't really aware of their mission. And not only that, they weren't fulfilling their mission. And it's so many decades later and still just kind of treading water. And maybe the pandemic helped highlight some of the challenges, but also it highlighted the big void that we still have not been able to fill. Tourism went almost to zero because we shut down the state. If we had that export economy, the agricultural export piece of that stool, perhaps our state would have not suffered as much. So that was a really terrific report. That's the most recent one we issued. We issue a whole different a lot of other types of reports, Jay. We do the performance audits, which are our bread and butter, but we do a lot of other work that the legislature has asked us to do. They put it in statute. We look at special funds, revolving funds, trust funds of state organizations. So these are pots of money that state agencies, state programs that are funded through other mechanisms, not through the general fund appropriation process by the legislature. So a good example would be the transit accommodation tax. Some of that tax goes into many different of these special funds or revolving funds, and that pot of money, it funds different programs, different state programs. But the legislature has very little visibility into the amount of money that are in these funds, and those funds don't lapse back to the general fund. They stay in those little pots that are held by various state agencies. We look at those funds once every 5 years. In other words, we rotate through the state departments, and we come back every 5 years and we look at that state department.
I want to add something here. I think it's really an important point that you have to keep looking. If you look on year one and then you turn your back on it till year 20, all kinds of things will have happened. So you have to keep looking. You have to come back to it. Yeah, you have to renew your examination every so often because things change.
The great part of the reports that I'm describing, these special fund, revolving fund, trust fund reports, is we provide this transparency, this information to the legislature because I mentioned that these programs are not funded through the general fund appropriation process. They're not competing with all these other requests for money because they have their own dedicated pot of money. So this year, when the pandemic started, when we shut down and we knew the state's economy was going to kind of take a hit, we went back and we looked at those funds. We went back and consolidated information from those reports that we've been publishing every year, but we've been rotating every 5 years to try to identify these funds, these pots of money that had an excess amount of money in there, trying to identify these opportunities perhaps the legislature could consider. I hate to use the word raiding, but taking some of the money out of those funds.
These are the notorious special funds.
Yes,
little silos all over state government.
That's right.
Agencies control the money and it's out of control of the legislature in general because nobody's looking except you.
That's right. And I heard Tom Yamachika mention this one the other day, and it's an easy example. It's the 5-cent deposit for bottles and cans. So that money gets put in a special fund, and that special fund, we report on it actually every 2 years. So we do, by law, we do a report, an audit of that fund every 2 years. And we've reported repeatedly that the balance in that fund is increasing every year. And what that means is we're buying a heck of a lot more bottles and cans. We had to pay the 5 cents for all those bottles and cans. We buy a heck of a lot more than what we redeem or what we recycle. So that fund has been growing by millions of dollars every year. Right now, the balance, or at least as of I guess it was June or July of 2020, the balance was over $50 million.
Oh,
So what that means is that because the revenues, the amount of money going into that fund exceed the expenditures, meaning the amount of money that we're redeeming, that means that that fund will continue to grow. You could take it theoretically to zero today and not worry, because there are more people are buying sodas and beer or whatever it may be than are redeeming those cans and bottles. So it should be able to sustain itself for a heck of a lot longer. So we were trying to provide information to the legislature so that they would have information that they can consider if they were trying to fill a budget hole. So that was a really interesting report that we issued during the pandemic, while we were shut down working remotely.
suffice to say, you've issued what, hundreds of these reports, and they're all there on the website, and they're all of great value. In fact, they make great reading, as a matter of fact. And they are a window into the way state governments work. And certainly, they're built for the legislature, but the people can also see them. I want to take a few minutes here as we get toward the end of the show, Les, and talk about this controversy between you and what is it, Scott Psyche, I guess, or his special team that wrote a 79-page report, which was critical of your office. We would be remiss if we did not discuss that. So can you tell me what happened and what's the criticism and how you responded to it, how you feel about it?
I hope that people, if they're interested, they actually go to our website and read the response. Because we did a response, or we responded to the speaker's working group report. I was unaware that the working group was even being contemplated until I got a memo from the speaker, a copy of a memo that he sent to his members in the House in mid-January, where he formed this working group, purportedly to determine whether or not we were complying with our constitutional mandate. And the constitutional mandate is very short. It says that we're supposed to issue audit reports, and those reports are given to the governor and the legislature. We publish them on our website as well, so the public can see them. We also provide it to the audited agency. So it seemed clear that we are doing our work that is mandated by the Constitution. In that memo, he said that he was concerned that we were not, that he wanted to help us do our work more efficiently, more effectively. I have never had a discussion with the speaker, with any other legislator, and for that matter, any other government official that expressed concerns about our work, the timing of our work, the quality of our work. I mentioned I'm very proud of the guys that work here and the work that we produce. So, but that said, we can do better. So if people had some concerns, I wanted to hear them. I still want to hear them. But I had never had a discussion with any legislator or anyone else about expressing concerns about our work. Yet the speaker formed this working group, and the working group wrote to me a couple weeks later, and it was, I had expected them to contact me pretty much immediately, just to kind of introduce themselves and set some ground rules as to what they intended to do and how they intended to do things. Never got contacted by them for 2 weeks, but I was getting calls from other people who were calling me, telling me that they had reached out to them. And the reason why that they were calling me was because they were uncomfortable with some of the questions. So, it is what it is. We're going to go through this process. I expected to talk with them and at least have them hear my side of the story, sort of thing. The working group contacted me by email a couple weeks after they were formed. They asked for thousands of documents, things like personnel records of both current employees as well as former employees from the day I started, 2016. They asked for other audit records that are confidential by statute. So my response back to them was, please explain the authority and the scope of the work, because it sure seemed like it was a much broader scope than what the speaker had defined. And then subsequently, we got another email asking for information about our OHA litigation, which OHA sued us. I'm not really sure why they sued us, but OHA filed a lawsuit against the office and me in my official capacity. Not sure really what the purpose of that lawsuit is, and it continues. It's still ongoing. But they wanted information about the lawsuit. Again, my response was, please explain scope and need for this information. And eventually, we got calls from former employees that were expressing concerns because they had been contacted by the working group. And they wanted to, their question was, did we give them their contact information, private, personal email, personal cell phone? And the answer is absolutely not. We didn't provide any information. So I never got a response from the working group to those letters that we wrote. And the letters, if people are interested, they're attached to our response. So people can see, what we were asking the working group for. And I think it's extremely reasonable given the type of information and the amount of information that they wanted. And then here comes the report. And actually, Edwin Young, the chair of the working group, he had represented that we would see the report and talk about the report, a draft of the report, before it was issued. And we never did. And so we just issued a response. The working group never spoke with me, never spoke to a current employee, yet they make conclusions about the work environment, about the timing of our work. And it's really based on nothing. And trying to find a diplomatic word for that report, I tell you, it's garbage. It's not supported by really anything. It's just, as we've noted from probably day one, it was probably written. The information that they were trying to quote gather, it was really to support a conclusion that they already had written. And that's the part that is very disappointing to me, that it doesn't seem like it was, kind of a good faith attempt to look at my office, look at me. We told the working group, we are peer reviewed every 3 years, peer reviewed by professional auditors, people that are qualified professional auditors, people that lead audit offices in different states. So they come here, they spend a week in our office, they look at our work papers, they talk to our employees, they try to get a sense of how we operate. And every one of those reports have given us not only a passing grade, the highest passing grade, and they've commented about the professional staff we have. And that was one of the comments that the working group made, is that we have people that don't know what they're doing. And that could be furthest from the truth. That is the farthest from the truth, that we have people that are professionals, that are dedicated professionals here. So I was very disappointed in that report, and that we didn't get a chance to offer our comment back. So when it got reported by the media, it's only the report. So people only have one side of the story. So I was glad that at least the Star Advertiser picked up part of our response. And like I said earlier, people are interested in really what we said in response to that report, why I call it garbage. They should go and read our response, which is on our website.
Good.
I
I was going
welcome
to
any
ask you
comment.
about that.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're almost out of time, but I want to ask you one more thing, if I could, Les, and that is, this has, you have to be independent. You can't function. You can't perform your constitutional mission unless you are independent of politics. Okay. But this sounds like raw politics. That's what it sounds like. There can be no other rational explanation. Tell me I'm wrong.
I can't tell you you're wrong. Feels like it to me too. I don't know what's going on. The speaker, like I said earlier, not only about work, but the speaker or any other, politician, legislator, anyone else, they've never had a discussion with me about whatever their issue is, whatever their concern is, about me personally, about my work, about my office. So I would have expected that discussion to happen. If someone had a problem with me or my office, I would hope that as professionals, people that are trying to do our job, trying to help the state, that we would have a discussion before someone formed a working group or some other other kind of group to try to, what seemed to me, try to really influence the office, influence me and in our office. So in addition to the working group, the speaker had introduced a bill that would have cut our budget by 53%. He introduced a bill along with the majority leader that would allow the legislature to set my salary, which right now is set by statute. He introduced another bill, I think, or maybe it was the majority leader with him, maybe together, introduced a bill that would establish an office of accountability that would be over my office as well as a number of the other good government offices. But it sure seemed to me that there's an attempt to put some, I don't know if it's politics, but certainly to influence my office or me personally. And that is not right. That is not appropriate. You know, you mentioned that by law we have this protection that we're supposed to be independent, unbiased, and I mentioned that we do our audits pursuant to government auditing standards, which are promulgated or issued by the U.S. Comptroller General. Those auditing standards require us to be independent, require us to be unbiased. And the speaker's attempt and the working group's attempt to kind of get information, to kind of influence it, we have pushed back really strongly because it is starting to infringe upon that independence. And that's the last thing that should happen to this office. Whether it's me in this seat or somebody else, this office needs to be above that. It needs to be independent. So when we issue reports, people don't suspect that it's based on politics, that we're trying to carry someone else's water, because that clearly is not how this office was intended to run. And that's not how we run today.
Les Kondo, I am so happy to be able to discuss these things with you. I'm so happy you came on ThinkTech. It's an important conversation. Les Kondo, the Office of the State Auditor, right here on ThinkTech. Thank you so much, Les.
Thanks for having me, Jay. It was nice talking to you.
Same. Aloha.